Okay.
So I hope you can all see my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, so let us begin. So today we are going to look at research methods, or in other terms called strategies. I think this was one of the terms I asked you to go and read about. So I hope you took time to read about them. This is a very, very important part of research methods. Very, very important. It's what makes your research scientific. And when I say research methods, I don't mean, please take note, I don't mean system development methods. Those are quite different. We're talking about research methods, the methods you use to get new knowledge. Okay? So we're going to look at those today. What we hope to gain at the end is to understand the significance of a research method. Yeah? The significance of a research method, the difference between methods, and how to select an appropriate research method for your research. We want to be able to differentiate between research methods and research tools. There's a big difference between a case study and questionnaires or interviews. Big difference. One is a research method, the other is a research tool. So here we have a summary of research methods, yeah? So you don't see in any of them, for example, a system development method, yeah? These are the research methods we are talking about, and it must highlight very, very significantly within your research. So let us start with the first one, experiment, sometimes referred to as laboratory experiments. At the end of this session, I'm giving you a group assignment, and I've given you 2 articles. One of those articles has used this research method. This particular research method is falls under the positivist research philosophy. Now, last week we talked about positivist research philosophy. I hope you remember what that is. Do you remember what the positivist research philosophy is? Do you remember what the positivist research approach is? No response? Okay, let's move on. So the experiment research method is classic. It's a classic research method. It's quite common amongst, it's quite common for those in the medical fields, the medical sciences. For example, I'm sure there were a lot of laboratory experiments on COVID-19 to find out what it is, its reaction to different medications, its reactions to different environments, and so on and so forth. I'm sure there were a lot of laboratory experiments to answer questions that scientists were asking. What is this COVID-19 virus? What environment supports it? What is it affected by, positively or negatively? What medications can help fight it? And so on and so forth. So it's a classical research method. It normally begins with a hypothesis. Now, I'm not going to repeat these words because I spoke about them in our last lecture, okay? So we normally begin with a hypothesis. And when we're doing research on this, we select samples of individuals from a known population. So just to give you an example, if we were to look in the area of COVID-19, imagine the time when the scientists were trying to research on the virus. Sorry, on the what do we call it? The vaccine. Yeah. If I just share again with a white, just give a demonstration. So imagine we had COVID-19 and we have a scientist who is researching on a vaccine, trying to find out its effectiveness in fighting or limiting what a vaccine. The purpose of a vaccine is to help the body build antibodies to fight a certain virus. So essentially what the vaccine does is they inject you with a non-lethal dose of the virus itself. The body begins to build its immune system so that when the actual COVID actually hits you, you get less of an effect as someone who has not been vaccinated. So let us say you have a laboratory experiment. Yeah. A scientist is doing a laboratory experiment. And this scientist says, I want to test this vaccine. So he wants to test the vaccine between men and women and people of different age groups, okay? Maybe from the age, maybe those who are supposed to receive the vaccine are between the ages of 18 and let's say 70, okay? So maybe they can group them, those between 18 and 25, those between 26, maybe, and 35, and so on and so forth. They cluster groups. Then they say, in these groups, let us go and create, in the whole population of Uganda, let us sample. In this group, we get 15 people, same thing here, 15, and so on and so forth until they get to 70. And they can decide of the 15. Let us make sure half are men. Okay, by 15 you can't really get, some are men, some are women, and you also make sure you get people of a certain health type. Okay, maybe those with underlying and those with those one without underlying health issues. You remember the COVID virus would affect people with underlying issues more than those with without. Take an example, those who are over 70, those with high blood pressure, those with the diabetes, things like that. So when you're doing an experiment, you have to control all variables, yeah? So if you remember what variables are, the variables in this case will probably be age. You're examining age, you're measuring people according to age, according to health status, then according to gender. Okay, those would be some of the variables you'd be examining. So you select these people and then you put them under a laboratory experiment. You inject them with the vaccine, then afterwards expose them to COVID. And then you examine according to age, those who fall to the best, those according to health status, according to gender, and so on and so forth. You examine and you give back results. So this is a typical of a laboratory experiment. Do we have any question? Hello? Yes, Gilbert, do you have a question? No, I'm going to assume then all is okay. Okay, let's get back to our lecture slides. Okay. So quite a number of things. We've talked about sampling. That's when we select from a certain known population. Then we have our planned variables, and we begin to measure those variables. That is typically what we are referring to in an experiment. So normally, an experiment is like a puzzle. You may have two groups or more. One is for experimental purposes, the other is for control. Yeah. So the example of that I would give you in the case of COVID, if you, let's say in the group of 70s, you get those who those in experimental, those who have no health issues, and those with health issues. So if I was researching just to find out if the vaccine is effective with or without underlying health issues, the experimental group would be that one who are healthy. Then the one under control would be the group where they are those with underlying issues, to find out does it still have effect when you have an underlying issue. So it's simply just to have a picture of both sides. Continuing on with research strategies. So we've looked at the experimental research. The next one is case study. So with case study, we want to study something within its real environment. Okay? Let me give an example. If I wish to study the effectiveness of an e-learning system for a university, the effectiveness of an e-learning system for a university. May I look at the term I've said for a university. I've not said which university, any university or an institution of higher learning. So I say I want to study this in a real environment to see how effective this e-learning system is. So I get an e-learning system, I implement it in a context. I want to implement it in a specific context and see how it reacts, how effective it is. Now, as a researcher, if maybe previous research has simply suggested, maybe other research may be researched it, they did maybe an experimental lab, experimental research where you had controlled variables, but I really want to know if there are any underlying issues within a real life setting that may affect effective use. So I'll put it in a real environment. So I'll say my case study, I'll have to pick a case study where I want to test it in a real university setting, okay? So in that case, I study it and see what exists. That is typical of a case study. Now, what would be my case study? My case study may be Uganda Matters University. My case study may be UCU. My case study may be Makerere, whichever. So if I just give you a picture of what that would look like, let me first clear all these drawings in terms of case study. Yeah. So the case study is a real life environment. Unlike the laboratory, or the experiment, a case study is real life. So if I gave you an example, if I went back to the case of COVID, where we're saying it is laboratory, you're putting people in a very, very controlled environment, very, very controlled. You're picking certain age groups with certain health statuses. Maybe you ensure they are on a good diet. And so that's a very, very controlled environment. But real life, if we're testing it in real life, people eat different foods. Some people are drunkards, some people are on these illegal drugs, and so on and so forth. So whoever is getting infected with COVID, it's a different setting. But a case study is real life. So apart from the experiment, the case study is real life. That case of COVID, that situation, if the vaccine was being tested, it would have to be real life, where you have different people from different backgrounds, and you leave them in their setting, whether they have food to eat as you take the vaccine or not, whether they have care around them, whether they are on other illegal drugs, whether they are alcoholics, you don't care, you simply give and then study, okay? So that's what the case study is, normally when we're studying something in a real life environment. So normally this is the kind of research we find in ICT, where somebody says, I'm going to build a website for a school with the hope of improving marketing. So the person designs a website, let me just call the WS for website, puts it in a school, brings it in a school. So the particular school would be the case study. They implement it and then study whatever exists within this context that will either affect it either positively or negatively. And that's what they report back, those things that affect the website. Okay? That's what is reported back. Do we understand so far?
Yes, madam.
Okay. So this is what we mean when we're doing empirical investigation of a particular contemporary phenomena. Okay? You're involves empirical. I think now you know what the word empirical means, and you're investigating a particular contemporary. Contemporary means something that is current. Yeah? Something that is current, that is now. Meaning, we cannot use case study research to study something of the past. We cannot study we cannot use case study research method if we are studying something of the past. Now, someone may say, how can we study something of the past? Yes, we can. For example, archaeologists are studying something of the past. Economists, for example, an economist may decide to study the state of Uganda's economy after colonization and before NRM rule. After colonization, that's really the past. Someone say, how would you study something like that? Well, there is statistical data which exists. For example, Uganda Bureau of Statistics has a lot of data going way back. data of 1994, data of 1985, backwards they have it. So an economist can have that study of a certain period in the past, and looking at GDP, looking at poverty levels, looking at disease levels, looking at healthcare access. All that data exists. That is someone studying something of the past. So now, we can see if we're studying a real life phenomena, we cannot do so using a case study. We're studying a phenomenon that is current, something that is a problem right now, something that that is of this time. Now, we are going to talk about research problems and research questions later, but we can hint on them. Normally, such a research question would begin with something like why. Why does this exist? Why are ICT considered supporters of efficiency? Why is this particular ICT working or not working? What? How? When you want to develop detailed, intensive knowledge about a single case, detailed, intensive knowledge about a single case. Again, one also of the articles I've given you for your next assignment, one of them uses case study. So here, this kind of research you may use questionnaires, you may interview, you may carry out observation, and so on and so forth. Now, this kind of case research method normally falls under interpretivism. Sometimes, but it can also be used in realism. Yeah. So you can try, and I'm going to leave you to think about it, especially as you go through your articles and in your groups, to try and relate these research methods to the research philosophies we discussed. The third research method is grounded theory. So grounded theory comes from an inductive approach or interpretivism, and I would point it to basic research or conceptual research. We talked about this before, okay? So I don't think any of us will be using this kind of research method. The primary purpose is for theory development, okay? So it comes from observation and generation of predictions. Take the example of Darwin's theory of evolution. If you remember it, Darwin started, if you go back and read about Darwin himself, he started by observing nature. That's how he came up with the Darwin's theory of evolution. So normally it's a method that is used when you're developing theory. So I don't think any of us will get to that, but take time and read about this research method. The fourth is ethnography, also very much on the inductive approach, or rather interpretivism. This research method comes from anthropology. Can anyone tell me what anthropology is?
I think it's a study of insects. I think.
No, not really. But that's almost a close. I know the words are quite similar, but not really. Okay, anthropology is it actually stems from UMU. You know, UMU has that department, development studies, yeah. So that one which studies communities and society. So that's where it comes from. It is trying to understand people within their social context and their culture and so on and so forth. I'll give you an example. We have all heard about female genital mutilation, not so?
Yes.
Yes. So it's basically a female circumcision, and we know that there are some tribes in eastern Uganda which carry this out, and different tribes across Africa carry this cultural act out. Now, it's generally agreed and accepted that this act is inhumane, very different from male circumcision. It's considered to be inhumane. It's extremely invasive. It has very, very bad side effects for women, long-term side effects for women, and it's quite traumatizing. When you hear the stories, it's a very traumatizing thing. It has actually been outlawed, I think, in every single country. But what is interesting is that women, even as adults, go ahead and seek it out, even when they had not received it as children, go ahead and seek it out. And even women themselves, it's fellow women who push for it. And scientists were trying to understand this. And the only way people could understand was to do ethnography research, which means you immerse yourself in the culture. Researchers went into these communities and stayed with them for months, even years, just to live with people and understand things from the perspective of those who do it, why they do it. So that is ethnography. Now you might say, okay, in ICT, where does this come in? You may not do it at your level, but in ICT it does come in. Why? Let me give you an example. ICTs are implemented in organizations. Organizations are social settings with their own cultures, and those cultures may affect the way a system is being used. So I'm not saying you will use it at undergraduate level, but just keep it in mind. So it's very much an inductive approach or qualitative approach, and it requires flexibility. If you remember what we talked about, qualitative research. Our fifth is action research. Again, you're also going to see in one of the case studies I've given, one of the articles I've given you. So this one also very much falls under inductive or interpretivism and qualitative research. It's basically research that is problem-oriented, where the researcher seeks to make a change in a particular context, but in making that change, they collaborate together with the participants and collect data. So it's creates a kind of a cycle where the researcher, I'll give you a typical example. My research used action design research. So it was design science mixed with action research, where I wanted to create a change within the health sector. So I first designed my first prototype, presented, and the health practitioner said, no, we don't, this is not useful, this is useful, things like that. Went back, changed, implemented another, and then changes, the things that the reactions I got. So from that's what the reactions and the observations, that's where I reported back. So that's what action research is. You implement something, seeking to make a change, and during that process, you come up with knowledge about the context in which you're applying. So this kind of research involves participations and close collaboration, okay? So the focus is upon change, creating that change, but in that process, you also collect data. The sixth research is design science. Now, this research method, I want to say, is extremely important for you as IT students. Extremely, extremely, extremely important, okay? I said most of you are going to use case study. That is true. But as long as you're designing an artifact, that means you're designing a system, you're designing a website, you're designing a mobile app, whatever it is, you must use design science. It should appear in your dissertation, in your proposal. It should appear, okay? So this research method is specifically for IS, ICT, IT. So it goes through, this research method recognizes that the researcher is designing an artifact. And by artifact, I mean it could be a system, it could be a mobile application, whatever it is. And in that process, the researcher goes through several stages to develop that particular artifact. Now, throughout the stages, the person is evaluating. When they come up with what we call the first hunch, the idea, I want to develop an IS system for the market, for marketing, to support marketing. Okay, that's an idea. So you begin the evaluation process as you come up with the idea. What is the system will look like, and so on and so forth. And then what have people written about IA and marketing? Then as you're reading about it, you come up with requirements and assumptions. Yeah. These are the goals defined for the first stage. What will be the functions of the artifact? What will be the user interface? In what context will it exist? In where will it be implemented? Then you come, the next one is structure and specifications as formulated on the requirements. Then a prototype is developed, then it is implemented. Then at the end, it is evaluated. Now, if the first hunch was to develop an IS system for the sake of marketing, the final evaluation is to find out, does it provide support to marketing? Does IA provide support to marketing? That's the final stage of evaluation, and that's what is reported back. Okay? So in these different slides, I actually quote the people who talk about these different research methods, but I'm also going to upload for you the articles that support or give you more details about these research methods. Do we have any questions so far? We have any question? No? Okay, let's move on.
Oh.
Okay. So next we have action design science. So action design science combines design science together with action research. And you can also read further about it. It's also for IT students, so I doubt very much that many of us will actually use this research. I particularly used it, but at undergraduate level, I doubt it. But read more about it. I don't want, again, to spoon feed you everything. Sorry, here's a blank page. Sorry. So now, just to take you back, this is the area we started by last week. We looked at this section, philosophies, research philosophies. We went to the approaches. Now we've been looking at the research methods themselves. So we also want to look at this section, which looks at, is our research cross-sectional or longitudinal? Now already we've seen something of this, cross-sectional or longitudinal. You remember when we talked about case study research, and I said you're searching on something contemporary, something that is happening right now. Yeah. So when we talk about cross-sectional and longitudinal, it talks about the time horizon. Okay. So cross-sectional is research is something that is being studied right now, taking a snapshot of a particular phenomenon at a particular time. Longitudinal is research that uses diaries, that looks at a change over time. I think I gave you an example of a research that was done in the UK, looking at child development from 0 years to 5 years. So that is longitudinal. You're looking at the change that takes place over a given period of time. Okay? But most of us, our research is cross-sectional. Either we're studying something right now, or I gave you an example of a researcher who says, I want to find out the state of Uganda's economy, maybe right after independence, or before NRM, between the time of October, Obote 1 and Obote 2, what was that that how was Uganda's economy. Okay, so that is cross-sectional, looking at a particular time, looking at a research at a particular time. Most of us, our research will be contemporary at undergraduate level, contemporary and cross-sectional. This we have, this one simply, they are not research methods again, these are simply part and parcel of trying to understand research methods. Our research methods can be exploratory, descriptive, or explanatory. When our research is exploratory, research can be about, when we're researching about a research problem, you may find a research problem where people know, or a research community knows little or next to nothing about something. So a researcher goes out to explore, to clarify understanding. Imagine the first time the COVID-19 researchers heard about, or viral researchers first heard about COVID-19. That time of 2019, I think that was the time it began to emerge, 2019. Was it not so? Was it 2018 or 2019? When it began to emerge, when we began hearing stories coming out of China. Imagine that time, researchers at that time were exploring, what is this virus? What is it? What is it composed of? And things like that. How bad is it? Now, at that time, most literature, I'm sure, when they heard about COVID, they knew about COVID. There were other COVID viruses, but this particular version was unknown. So I'm sure as they were reading about it from literature, they were finding little with what was currently being found. So there had to be an exploration that had to be done. Okay? So normally when a research is being explored, we normally focus on interviews because we are trying to be flexible with our research. We know very little. So now as we say this, we already see we are leaning towards qualitative research, interpretivism, and inductive. We're being flexible and adaptive because we don't know what we're going to discover. And whatever we discover is what we will come back and report. That's what exploratory research is. Then we have descriptive, and descriptive, we've already seen something of this, we've talked about it. We want to portray an accurate profile of a person or event or situation. Then research can be exploratory. This is when to want to study a problem in order to explain relationships between variables. And by the time we begin to talk about variables, it means we already have something controlled. Relationships, something is explanatory. Again, one of the articles I'm giving you is explanatory. The other is exploratory. Okay? So, note which is which. The last research method is a survey. Okay? So the survey is when we use questionnaires or structured interviews. You want to collect large amounts of data from a huge population. This is a survey. So this one is normally done by quantitative researchers or those using the positivist approach. This research method is used. It's very rare at your level to use this, but still look at it. So this is your assignment, your group assignment, problem identification. I've given you 2 articles, Olsen and Myers, and then this particular people. In your groups, select an article you wish to work with. Identify the research problem. What research has been done by others regarding this problem? You should find it in that particular article. What gaps do they identify from what the researchers have done? How did they tackle their research problem? What were the results? What was the research approach? What were the methods and what tools were used? So you're going to submit a presentation. You're going to make a presentation and submit it. Presentation will be was it to be 19? Should be 20th. Huh? I think that's when we're next meeting, but you can submit your work by the 19th of March. Do we have any question?
No.
Sure, we are okay? Are we okay with what we've done?
Yes.
Okay, so my question to you is, one, I got your research, your groups. I am going to put them in Moodle and activate this assignment. What I would like from the groups is for you to tell me when we can meet for consultation. Online, of course. I don't know if you had agreed on any particular time as groups.
Not
No.
yet. Not yet.
Okay, I hope you do so during the course of the week. Okay? Hope we do so accordingly. But I can leave you this extra time. Look at the assignment. It's already these slides are up on Moodle, but I'm going to activate the assignment as well. Okay?
Okay, madam.
Madam, which slide is this?
This is research methods. It's
Okay.
under it should be, yeah, it's called research strategies. It should be under research philosophy section on Moodle.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.